Hi, I'm Kenny Anderson, Director of Multicultural Affairs for the City of Huntsville, and welcome to Impact. We're always delighted to share information about great things that are happening right here in your community, and of course today will be no different. I have to tell you, I'm really excited about talking to my guests today who have some great information to share about an issue that is affecting more and more people every day, and that's Alzheimer's. Today, to talk with us about this horrible disease, which is really what it is, but we're really going to shine the light on that today, is Michelle Cain. She's Diversity Outreach Coordinator with the Alzheimer's Association Mid-South Division. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you for having me, Kenny.
And Michelle, of course, does lots of different programs throughout the community to help people understand the dynamics of this disease. And I want to commend you, first of all, for the initiative that this agency has taken and really being proactive in getting the message out. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Mark McCarter is a board member of the Alzheimer's Association Mid-South Division, and we welcome him to the broadcast today.
Thank you, sir.
It's good to have you here, and of course I'm going to be interested in hearing from you today from a variety of perspectives, because I know you've got a family member with Alzheimer's, and also you've got a commitment to a organization that I'm always curious to hear from people, what sustained you in that process. And so we'll talk a little bit about those things today.
Okay.
Ciku Theuri is here with us also. She's a volunteer intern with the agency. We want to welcome her to the broadcast today.
Thank you very much.
And how long have you been a part of this agency?
I've only been a part of the agency for about 3 months now, but it's been amazing so far. So
yeah, it's probably been a big learning experience too.
Definitely.
And what do you do aside from being a volunteer intern?
Well, I have definitely gained an appreciation for how much this disease needs to be brought about awareness to the community. And so I find myself, on social media, kind of bringing more awareness to my friends and my family, and just talking about how important it is to understand and know the implications of this disease.
Are you in school now, or did you finish school?
I am in school right now.
Okay,
yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, I'm a senior at Oakland University. I'm studying business management and broadcast journalism, and I'm doing this internship with the Alzheimer's Association as a part of my management internship.
Okay, that's interesting, because I wondered about that, and glad I got a chance to plug the great Oakland University. That's my alma mater. Mm-hmm. And didn't know you were going to say that, but I'm really happy to hear that.
Good.
But then I thought, well, social work, psychology, sociology, and then you said management and journalism, communications. I was like, how does that happen? But it's through the management end of it that you're doing this internship.
Yes.
Well, I think that's a rather, creative way of approaching an internship, and certainly it's an inclusive way as well, mm-hmm. especially when we consider what this disease is. Right. And that's my first question, Michelle. Again, I'm a mental health professional by trade. I came out of Oakland many years ago, like all other psychology majors, just anxious to save the world. And we wanted to be counselors who made a difference in other people's lives. And I did that for many, many years, almost 20 years, in fact. But on the very start of my career, we knew about Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. We talked about Alzheimer's. And we encountered Alzheimer's from time to time. Now it seems like it's just everywhere. And so let's talk a little bit about what Alzheimer's is and why we see the prevalence of it today.
Well, what Alzheimer's is, it's a degenerative brain disease, and it is a form of dementia. So that's where a lot of people get it mixed up. What's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? Alzheimer's is a form of dementia, and right now it affects about 5 million people in our country. Every 67 seconds, someone is affected by this disease. And so with the baby boomers being the second largest segment of the population, and the last set of baby boomers turning 65 at the rate of 10,000 a day, that's one of the reasons why we're seeing so much more of the disease now. And the other thing is, 20, 30 years ago, we knew about it, but people whispered about it. People didn't talk about it. And most people didn't know that that's what happened to their family members until their family members passed away and an autopsy was done and they could see the lesions on the brain and they could see the aphagy. So that's what the difference is now, that we can actually see it before the person passes away.
And even though I'm not practicing psychology now, I do teach psychology, so I keep my license fresh and all that stuff. I'm still heavily engaged and heavily interested in the field. And I know one of the things that has been remarkable, and I just saw a wonderful and powerful 60 Minutes piece on this just a couple weeks ago that talked about brain science has changed.
Yes.
I mean, with the emergence of MRIs and PET scans and CAT scans, I mean, we're able to look at the brain now in ways that we never were able to look at the brain. And we can see things today that we couldn't see 20, 25 years ago.
Exactly. And even with the actual lesions on the brain, now they can see them up to 10 years before they start causing a problem. So now researchers are trying to figure out, well, how do we stop it from killing the brain cells now that we know that the amyloid plaque is there up to 10 years before it starts to affect the person?
Yeah, this is really amazing science to me, and even more so when it actually affects a loved one. And Mark, I know you've got a personal story.
Right. I'll go back to even more than 20 or 30 years ago. Lost my grandmother to what in the 70s it was just called hardening of the arteries. And we watched her deteriorate. But several years ago, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. We lost her in January of 2012. And it was a relatively short period that we fought this, but it was still such an impact. And as Michelle says, 5 million people may suffer from Alzheimer's, but there are countless millions more who are caretakers and family members. And I think that's one of the great things the association has started doing in recent years now is what can it do for the folks who are doing for others, and what kind of support can the association bring. And that's what I've told anyone who I encounter about this, call the Alzheimer's Association. If you have a loved one dealing with who's been diagnosed, you need help too. You're going to need support groups, you need a shoulder to cry on, you need all the resources to help you manage your time. The great book that everybody recommends, the Bible of Alzheimer's, the 36-hour day. And if you are a full-time caregiver, and 36 hours a day is not enough. Now, we were fortunate enough that we were able to bring my mother here into town to an assisted living place that then had memory care unit and some trained professionals and loving people that took care of her. We were there on a daily basis, but the day-to-day maintenance and caregiving, we were fortunate enough that we were able to use that memory care unit at Harbor Chase. A lot of people aren't as fortunate, and it's a tough battle. And then it starts hitting home even more when you hear of early onset Alzheimer's and people that we know now whose loved ones are diagnosed even in their 40s. And as one of our friends that very active in our association says, and she's in her early 50s, and she says, we're living the lives now of 80-year-olds because of we're just so limited in what we can do because of the way this impacts. So all of this, and following my mother's journey, in my day job as a columnist at the Huntsville Times, I decided I wanted to chronicle this, and a little bit cathartic to be able to do this, and hopefully educational for some folks. So I wrote a dozen things during that course, and still try to write a few things about this disease. And then that led to the invitation to join the Mid-South Board. I'm proud to be involved there. Wow.
That's a beautiful story, by the way, because I think it's just one of those natural ways in which people get involved with things. They have the personal first-person testimony, and then they seek for ways to, as you said, cathartically deal with the challenges that you face. I want to ask you, because this is something I hear a lot, and it's one of the most painful things to me, hearing a first-person testimony about Alzheimer's. And I think that the profile of Alzheimer's was elevated when Nancy Reagan was experiencing it with her husband, former President Ronald Reagan. And she kind of described it in lots of ways, but one of the, and I'll hypothesize, one of the ways she described it was kind of a darkness, an increasing darkness that kept encroaching on her life. And this darkness involved just a painful separation from the memories of one's life and not being able to connect with those ways in any meaningful way. And that this disease began to progress even more, the darkness got darker and the separation became more painful. What did you experience with your mom?
We went through a lot of that, of certainly old memories had disappeared. My father had passed away before that, and I think what breaks my heart, and to have seen it, watching Mother or people in her surroundings, were to see the couples that thought they were going to grow old together, and who should have had shared memories of a rich 50, 60 years of marriage that now was only held by that one person. And certainly we had that with my mom. There were certain childhood memories, and my daughter would visit, or the other grandkids would visit, and she, the things that we remember of old Christmases and things like that, certainly my mom didn't. But she was content and she was happy. For the most part, it was a difficult move for her. It was so gradual, but she was around some folks, and in this, where she was in the memory care unit, a lot of activity that tried to keep them as sharp as they could, keep them active. And so we were really blessed by that. But yeah, there were certainly a lot of dark moments, and there are moments that, and everybody will tell you this, you just sometimes just have to laugh. You just have to laugh with them and not at them, and you just, because you can't cry the whole time. So if you can laugh a little bit at some of the things that go on, and the one we laughed about, my mom was married to my dad for would have been 60 years, but she got her a boyfriend who had a slight resemblance to my dad, and we would see them, and she would just almost be snuggled up on the couch watching TV in the main room, and it was kind of cute to watch. And so there were those moments of lightness too that I think helped us get through a lot of those weeks.
Yeah, it kind of brings balance to the pain.
Exactly.
Ciku, of course, you kind of dove right in head first 3 months ago in the process, and you're learning a lot, probably fast.
Oh, yes.
You're experiencing a lot. What is maybe one of the most significant things that you've learned since you've been involved, or one of the most significant experiences that you've been involved in?
I think the most important thing that I've learned is just how much it impacts the loved ones. Before I had been interning at the Alzheimer's Association, I had a basic understanding of what Alzheimer's was, and really when you have a basic understanding, you just think it affects the person that has Alzheimer's. But ever since I have been interning here, it's really opened my eyes to how incredibly, how incredible the caregivers are and the sacrifices that they have to make. Hearing the cases, in and out of the office of what people go through in terms of taking care of their loved ones and the things that they have to put aside just to care for them is just incredible. And it's really been interesting to hear about and learn about. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's really impacted me.
Michelle, just a few weeks ago, we talked to the folk at Alabama Respite, and they came on and had a caregiver on, and I mean, we just kind of fleshed that whole thing out about how, it's tough enough to have a person who's going through something, but then you've got the caregiver, like Mark said, and you're trying to balance your life, your family, your personal interests, your needs. Life doesn't stop because a loved one develops Alzheimer's or some other type of condition. And so I know one of the most important things that you are doing is going around the community, you're having lunch and learns, and you're having an opportunity to connect with various community resources, businesses, churches, and otherwise, to have these kinds of things. What are those things that you're doing, and why are they important for people to get involved in? And they're free, by the way.
Yes, everything we do is free to the community. We are the world's leading voluntary health organization dedicated to research, care planning for families, and support of families that are caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's. We offer early stage programs for people who are in the early stages of the disease. So we have early stage support groups. We have early stage.
And is that mostly what that would involve, just providing support, or are there other kinds of things that could happen?
There are other kinds of things that can happen. We have early stage social engagements. So they're peer-to-peer engagements where they can meet with each other, have lunch, do an activity, be social, and the caregiver has an opportunity to have just a couple of hours where they can do something together because the caregivers come with their loved ones. So we do those quarterly. This past quarter they went to the Botanical Gardens. We've gone to the Museum of Art. We've done different things to help people in the early stages still stay active. We also have the ministerial lunch and learns where we try to engage the faith-based community because we all know when something happens in your home, where's the first place you turn? You turn to your church. You turn to your pastor. So we really feel that if pastors and ministerial councils and lay ministers, if they are equipped with this information, then they'll be better able to serve the members of their congregations. So for me, it is more than a job. It's a labor of love. I've seen it in my own family, and I'm determined that more families should know about the resources that are available to them. We also have our caregiver conference. Several times a year we do educational programs. We actually have monthly lunch and learns called brown bag lunches. We do caregiver conferences twice a year. Our next one is this Thursday at the Cooper House. So we have a lot of different opportunities for people to learn.
Right. Well, it happened recently, and so people that are watching the show now will perhaps, we don't want to throw them off. We
Yes.
want to make sure that they're not looking forward to it because it really is
Yes.
great information. But you do have them a couple of times a year.
We do.
Right. And that's a good opportunity for people to be involved. Now, you mentioned the faith community, and that's really important because that's where people are.
Exactly.
And the reality is that if you're going to connect with people who have these needs, this is just a natural resource to be able to go about doing that. I can't help but wonder, though, especially I'm putting my multicultural hat on right now, that there may be some cultural challenges that you may face as it relates to reaching people just because of the cultural dynamics of certain communities. Has that manifested itself in any way up to now, or is it something that you all are interested in looking into?
Well, through diversity outreach, we do try and reach as many communities as we can. So we have volunteers who are willing to go into the Hispanic community. We do have African American outreach. Something other chapters are doing is LBGT outreach. So we, at the Alzheimer's Association, we believe in being inclusive. So we try our best to reach everyone and help them where they are and meet their needs.
Right, right. And as an extension of that, you start talking about people of different faiths. Of course, you've got the Christian community, but then you have the Jewish community, you have the Buddhist community, you have the Baha'i community, you have the Hindu community. You have lots of different faith groups out there that you'd also like to reach because I imagine that Alzheimer's disease is no respecter of anything. It doesn't look and say, well, you're this kind of a person, so we're not going to bother you.
No.
It's a human condition that anybody can experience, and you certainly want to be able to reach people.
Most definitely. And that is a big part of what I do, trying to reach all the faith-based communities. Mm-hmm. We try to be as inclusive as we can. Now, there are some that maybe think they don't need our services, but at some point, they will. And so I always leave the door open that whatever you need, we are here to serve you.
Yeah. And again, Mark and maybe Ciku can also once again reiterate why it's so important for caregivers to know that there is care for the caregiver. Because one of the biggest risks you face is burnout. Yes. The idea that you've got this tremendous strain on you and this tremendous responsibility, and you can go up in smoke if you don't take care of yourself.
Exactly. Those are the things that just the coaching almost the Alzheimer's Association can give to caregivers. And I would think another one that I think where caregivers, and to go back a little bit to the cultural thing, there's still a stigma with this disease. And certain cultures and certain caregivers or families, and depending, I think even the older you get, maybe the less, the more, that just any aspect of a mental illness, there's a stigma. No, it's the same illness as a cancer or something else. It's an illness, and it shouldn't have a stigma attached to it. And I know we dealt with that personally with my mom when we saw her slipping a little bit, and she would see my grandmother and the treatment that she had in those days, it was more primitive. And it's like, I'm not going crazy. I'm not going, no, you're not. But you have an illness, and we need to take care of this best as we can. And so the support and the education that caregivers can get through the association is huge. And it obviously then comes down to a little bit of, we need the money for it too. And that's been a lot of the advocacy that I've seen caregivers be involved in, and I've tried to be involved in with, and I may be jumping ahead a little bit from what Michelle may want to talk about, but the Day on the Hill, where we go and lobby in Montgomery to, let's pass some legislation. Let's help this. The last 2 years I've been in Washington at the National Forum, where we go to Capitol Hill and visit with senators and representatives there, just to push through bills that are just a tiny speck of the budget that would help this disease, and with the notion that how much money has been earmarked for other diseases and what great job it's done for other diseases. So how about a little share of the pie too for Alzheimer's, and look what could possibly be accomplished.
You know, Michelle mentioned 10,000 people turning
65 every day.
Every day
Yes, sir.
among the boomers.
Yes.
And I'm a boomer. So, you know, you definitely cause me to sit up straight and listen when you say that, because I'm in that age range. I'm in that category, that cohort of people that certainly are susceptible, not just to turning older, but also to perhaps experiencing this disease. And it's important, I would imagine, for people to know family histories.
Yes.
And to be on top of that as much as they can.
Yes, family history is a risk factor. Your age is a risk factor. Your, I'd say, healthy lifestyles like diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, those are all risk factors for the disease. So, and there are segments of the population that don't pay attention to those risk factors. So that in turn puts them at a higher risk for the disease. But like you said earlier, this disease is no respecter of persons. You could be a rocket scientist, a surgeon, a housewife, someone with a third-grade education. It doesn't matter. It impacts us all.
Yeah, that's a good point you made too, because when you think about the lifestyle thing, you know, a lot of people think, well, gee, I better not do the high cholesterol thing because I may get heart disease, or they say, you know, I better not do the big sugar, the blood sugar thing because I'll get diabetes, you know. But they're not thinking about Alzheimer's. They're not thinking about that mind-brain body connection. And the reality is that we're an integrated whole.
Exactly.
And we have to be conscientious about all of those aspects of our lives. I've often heard it said that one of the ways for people to keep their minds sharp while they're still able to is to read, to do word puzzles and those kinds of things. There's some truth to that.
There is. Keeping your brain active is very important. And heart health and brain health are closely related. Like you said, most people don't make that connection. But taking on a new hobby, something you've never done before, something that will keep your mind active, all those things are important. Whereas as the disease progresses and kills the brain cells, you can't regenerate new brain cells, but you can make new connections with the cells that are remaining. Yeah. So it's important. Try a Sudoku puzzle. Try something that challenges your mind. It's very important.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful that there are ways that we can address the issue before we are faced with the inevitability, perhaps, in our lives, that we will get it.
Well, I think people should read constantly.
Yeah.
Yes, as somebody who's written a book and who works for AL.com most of the time, I think people should read constantly just to make sure.
Absolutely. And Mark, you should have bought a copy of your book, because this would have been the time you would have looked up at the screen and said, here's, we'll come back. Hey, come back and talk about your book. We're always looking for interesting things to talk about on the broadcast. I really want to thank you all for being here today. Michelle Cain, she is the Diversity Outreach Coordinator for the Alzheimer's Association Mid-South Division. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kenny, for having me.
Mark McCarter, he is a board member of the same organization. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Kenny. And
Ciku Theuri is here. She is a volunteer intern, senior, graduating senior?
Graduating senior.
Class of 15. Oakwood University, the great Oakwood University.
Of course.
It's rich heritage in that school now.
Definitely.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here today, and best wishes to you all as well. Tell people where they can get more information about the Alzheimer's Association. Phone number, website, Facebook page.
We have a 24/7 helpline, and that number is 800-272-3900. You can call it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is a trained professional that will answer any questions, and you can also find us at alz.org.
All right, great. Hopefully people will take advantage of that, and we'll try to put those characters up on the screen as well so people can get a hold of them. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kenny.
We want to thank you for being a part of our discussion today, and we hope that you learned a lot about Alzheimer's. We're going to have these folk back on because this is an ongoing issue, an ongoing challenge, and there's so much more to talk about. As Michelle said, there are conferences that they do and lunch and learns that go on all the time. You, in fact, want to like our Impact with Kenny Anderson Facebook page, as well as our City of Huntsville Multicultural Affairs page. We're always promoting information about the Alzheimer's Association, and that's a great way to stay up to speed on what's going on. In the meantime, we hope that you have a great rest of the day. I'm Kenny Anderson, as always. Thank you for being here today. We'll see you again next week.